Hey, but if you can hear me, just tell me. I can't hear anything.
We're not talking yet. I'm going to go ahead and call this Lafayette Parish School Board Special Board meeting into session. First item up, I'll just go ahead and read it again, is 1.2, the Lafayette Parish School Board certification pursuant to gubernatorial proclamation JBE 2020-30 and notice and instructions regarding live stream and public comment. On our agenda, 2.1 is in finance is our review of the 2020-2021 budget recap and timeline. Mr. Guidry. Hang on, fellow board members. Mr. Guidry is on his way.
Okay, with regards to the timeline, there have been no changes since our last meeting. Our Next meeting is scheduled for April 23rd, at which time we'll bring back all the budgets that have already been presented, and we'll ask the board to motion or indicate to the staff that it's okay to move forward. And when that occurs, we'll have public advertisement as to when the proposed budgets will be available for inspection by the public, followed by a public hearing on May 13th, and a special board meeting on that same day shortly after the public hearing, where there would be the adoption of the budget at 4:30 here in the boardroom.
Thank you, Mr. Guidry. Fellow board members, we'll go through each item one at a time. If you have any questions, some of the items at the end will require action this evening, but we'll go ahead and start with 2.2, Preliminary Report 2020-2021, General Fund Budget Summary, Projected Revenues and Expenditures. Mr. Guidry.
Okay, so at our March 31st meeting, board made a motion to increase the transfers to the self-funded construction fund for the 3 schools. The line item, Cameron Heights, Prairie Elementary, and Lafayette High. And so what we did was we went back, regrouped, and took a look at potential offsets so that we could keep the budget balanced after increasing the transfers to that line item in the amount of 1.7 million. So I'd like to start at row 46. Ms. Richard can. It's not available this time. Okay.
For all of you waiting and watching, we're just waiting on the budget to be put up on the screen. There we go, Mr. Guidry.
We can scroll down to row 46. I'd like to review the adjustments that administration is proposing to offset against that $1.7 million increase in the amount of funds being transferred to self-funded construction for those three schools, for the construction of those three schools in the future. So row 46, there is the second to last third to last column. Last column is footnote numbers. Second to last column is proposed adjusted 415 special board meeting. Third to last column is the column I'll be focusing in on, and that is the 41520 administrative adjustments. And these are the proposed offsets that administration is presenting to the board. So the first one is on row 46. Back at the March 31st meeting, this particular line item provided for regular ed staffing appeals of 17.5 slots, the equivalent of 17.5 teaching slots, and the administrative adjustment would be to reduce that 17.5 by 5 teaching slots, bringing it down to 12.5 for a savings of $330,000. The next administrative adjustment is on row 67. There is a line item for school safety officers, reduction of 5 slots for an estimated savings of $320,000. Now, we do have another agenda item that relates to this specific adjustment. It is agenda item 2.10. This item was a similar item was discussed at the last board meeting, and in trying to arrive at an offset for the 1.7, we thought it would be a good offset to come back to the board with, but we did want to call attention to it, the fact that it had been discussed previously, and so we listed it as a separate line item, separate agenda item as well, at 2.10. The next proposed, well, I was going to say offset, but it's actually an increase, but all of this will net and offset the 1.7. Row 68 is an administrative adjustment increasing by 1 teacher slot to provide for the Karen Crow Middle informatics teacher. They're in their 3rd year of the program, and most academies have this slot allotted to them or allocated to them. We feel that this particular program is at that point where that slot is needed. The next row, row 69, is the addition of an educational diagnostician, estimated cost of $89,000, and that is to bring us closer to the staffing ratios required for our assessment teams, pupil appraisal assessment teams. I believe we had requested a waiver for the current year, and we're looking to not have to do so for this position for 2021. Row 70, that particular administrative adjustment is a reduction in school district-wide overtime equivalent to 10% across the board. So what we mean by that is not every cost center will be cut to 10% for this line item, because some of them have already either offered up the cuts themselves or have received cuts in previous years to where their budgets really cannot afford to be cut any further and still be representative of what we would expect the expenditures to be. So the total there is 52,342. The two areas that had the more significant cuts, only because they have the more significant overtime, is maintenance, building maintenance, and custodial operations. But there were many other cost centers who received cuts, but they were in the $2,000 to $3,000 range. But the sum total of all those reductions is $52,342. We go to the cost centers, row 79, cost center 1109, workers' compensation payments, proposed adjustment of $257,310. So that would reduce the proposed original budget that was proposed of $3,258,605 down to $3,001,295. This reduction is a result of our having looked at a 5-year history. The last 2 years, we've seen some pretty sizable drops in our total workers' comp claims. So we're hoping that that 2-year trend will continue. And that was the reason for recommending this proposed cut. Row 81, risk management. We basically had a reduction there in the employee assistance plan line item, and we're not reducing any services, but we are reducing the budget to make it more reflective of what the actual expenditures are. So the budget was slightly overstated, and that's based on a 5-year review. So we're reducing the budget, not the services, by the $7,500. And that would be the case for each item I'm mentioning. It's a proposed reduction to the budget. It's not a proposed reduction to services from this point forward. Rental of facilities. This is row 84. Cost center 1116, $10,424. That line item is for custodians when our facilities are rented after hours or on weekends. The budget for that particular line item has been slightly more than what our actual expenditures have been if you look at the last 5 years of historical information. Row 85, cost center 1117. Other community relations, a reduction of $59,500. This particular line item is where we reimburse the tax assessor's office for our pro rata allocation or pro rata share of their expenses for their software application and maintenance of their software application with regards to property tax assessments and collections. We've seen a reduction in that line item over the past 3 years, mainly because they had they migrated over to a new software system about 4 years ago or so. So, of course, the first year of implementation was significantly more costly, and now we're pretty much down to the maintenance from year to year. So we've seen a reduction in what we've in our pro rata share. So we feel that we can reduce the proposed budget. The next row, row 88, cost center 1202. That's personnel, a reduction of $34,304. And that particular line item is to the foreign teachers' legal fees. About 3 years ago, we had some visa issues that had to be addressed by a law firm. And since that time, we feel that not only have they been addressed, but we can see our legal fees actually having decreased a bit. So we're removing that spike the year that we had an unusually large amount of work being done so that it's more reflective of what we anticipate those expenses to be in fiscal year 21. We can go to row 94, any management utilities, a reduction of 14,000. That reduction is to the electricity line item, utilities dash electricity. We anticipate we can reduce it by 14,000 and still have an adequate budget. Row 99, high school summer program, a reduction of $33,289. That reduction is in the line item for teacher supplemental pay during the summer. We're not reducing the number of teachers, but some of the teaching, some of the program elements are now online, and the number of hours being put in by teachers have decreased. So based on the last 3 years of history, we feel that we can reduce the budget and not impact the program. $33,289. Any questions up to this point before I proceed on any of the proposed, or would you like to go through them all and then come back and you have a preference? We can continue and then ask if there are any questions. Okay,
Keep going, Mr. Guidry.
thank you. Row 109, I'm sorry, row 108, computer services, $20,000. And that particular line item is in management contracted services. It also is a reduction to budget to better reflect what the expenses have been over the past several years. Row 112, cost center 1309, transportation, $300,000 administrative adjustment. That particular adjustment is to the operational reimbursement line item, and is reflective of the fact that the number of contract bus drivers that we employ has decreased over the last 3 to 4 years. This particular line item has not been decreased, or if so, very minimally. So the $300,000 adjustment better reflects what we anticipate our actual operational reimbursements to be next year, and also allows a little bit of room in the event that we do hire an additional 1 or 2 or 3 contract drivers. We've left adequate budget in there to cover that. Row 116, copier purchases, self-finance, reduction of 40,000. That line item is, at one time, our schools were basically lease purchasing their copiers, and the imputed interest rates for those copiers were in the 7 to 8% range. So we started a program internally where we offer, we buy the copier at the school district level outright, and the schools have 4 years to pay us back, and we charge a 1.5% rate, which is a combination of interest and administrative time to process that. It's been very successful. I don't think we have any more lease purchase agreements. You can pay 1.5% instead of 7 or 8. But nonetheless, we feel we can reduce that line item by 40,000 and still meet the needs of the orders that are being placed by our schools. Row 138, cost center 1428, textbooks is an increase of $20,130. That increase reflects the 2021 pricing for ELA grades 6 to 10. The numbers that we presented at the 331 meeting was based on current year pricing, because the 21 pricing was not yet available to us. And now we have adjusted it and realize that it will require an additional $20,130. So that's actually an increase for the ELA grade 6 to 10 guidebooks and supplemental materials. If we can scroll down to row 185. This cost center is the E-rate cost center. The proposed adjustment is a decrease of $383,941. That decrease is reflective of the fact that over the past few years, there are certain services and certain types of equipment that once qualified for the E-rate program, that no longer qualify for the leach rate program. So we feel that the $1,008,965 is more reflective of the years in which more of the equipment was covered and more of the services were covered at a higher reimbursement percentage. This reduction would still leave $625,024, which we feel is adequate to cover the equipment and the services that are still covered by the E-rate program. The E-rate program is a federal program to encourage purchase of technology, my internet service, WAN service, long distance, and at one point I believe it covered wiring and other items. But again, I guess the funds are decreasing at the federal level, so we're seeing the services that are covered decrease as well. Scroll down to row 193, cost center 1520. That cost center, it's fund transfers, and that reflects a $1.7 million that was requested during the March 31st meeting. And so with all of those changes, if approved as presented, if you go to row 202, make that 203. The second to last column, proposed adjusted 415 special board meeting. You'll notice a budgeted surplus of $522. So this is a balanced budget as presented. Slightly less than the $13,042 the previous meeting, but by the same token, we've added $1.7 million to the transfer line item for those three schools. So at this point, if we want to open it up for questions for any of the proposed administrative adjustments that we reviewed this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Guidry. My fellow board members, does anyone have a question, comment, remark?
Mr. President, I have a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Santani.
I would just like to tell Superintendent Trosclair, Mr. Guidry, and everyone else who worked on these changes and administrative adjustments. I thank you for the hard work and the effort that you put into this over the last 2 weeks.
I would have to agree with that, Mr. Santani. Any other board members have any comments before we move on to the?
Mr. President,
Yes.
Tommy here. Do we need a motion to approve that?
Not at this point.
Not at this point, Ms. Angel. That would be next meeting.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Kate LeBeau. I just again want to echo what Justin said. Thank y'all. Obviously, you put a lot of hard work and effort into this to help us with the desired goal of finding that extra 1.7 million. So thank you for all your hard work. It really means a lot. And my only concern would be the removal of teachers. So if we do further analysis and determine that there's places that we could, in fact, cut others, that would be a recommendation of mine, is that we try as hard as we can. I know in my discussion with Irma earlier, it would be to our benefit to have those 5 teachers. So if we can do that, that would be a great thing. But obviously, the balanced budget looks great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LeBeau. Anyone else have a comment, question?
May I make one more comment if no one else has one?
You go ahead, Dr. Aguilar will follow you, but go ahead, Mr. Santani.
Okay, I'll just point out to Ms. LeBou and everyone else, please remember that these teacher slots that are being reduced, those are slots that don't actually exist yet. Those are slots that the administration believes they think they'll need, but there's some uncertainty there. So we are not actually going to be reducing the number of teachers that are currently employed.
Thank you for clearing that up, Mr. Santani. Dr. Aguilar, you had a comment?
I do. Thank you. Going back to row 69, the addition of the educational diagnostician position. Board members, I know you've received a couple of emails from pupil appraisal team members suggesting that the district is out of compliance with Bulletin 1706. And according to their calculations, we are woefully short some 5 positions to be compliant. They estimate we would need three additional educational diagnostician positions and 2 school psychologist positions. This district has historically been out of compliance with these pupil appraisal teams. And while it's commendable to be adding one of the necessary 5 positions, Ms. Trosclair, I would urge you to try to locate funds for at least one more position and see if we can maybe take 2 years to close this out of compliance situation for the district. These pupil appraisal team members are under the gun, mandated to perform various services for the district that in turn produce revenue for the district. And so it's time to really be aggressive about getting in compliance with Bulletin 1706.
Yes, sir, and I agree, Dr. Aguilar. I've been in conversation with Dr. Rabelais and Ms. Artigo, our Director of Special Education, and we've actually identified some areas, some avenues in which we can more than likely provide 2 more positions through attrition in that department, as well as some contracted services. But yes, sir, we are working. I feel confident that we will be able to put a full team in place and possibly a team and a half.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions for Mr. Guidry?
Yeah, I have a comment and a question.
Go ahead, Dr. Chasson.
In that same department though, haven't we always been over in other categories? So do we need to just trim in that same department and then add these positions that I'm hearing about?
Dr. Chasson, that is part of our conversation that we've had with Ms. Artigo and Dr. Rabelais. We are short here. We do have resources that aren't required by Bulletin 1706.
Okay.
Certainly, we support the need. I mean, we certainly support those positions because we have been behind academically in our students with disabilities subgroup, so we want to support them as much as possible. But yes, you are correct.
Okay. And my question is the school safety officers. What was the previous vote on that at the last meeting?
I seem to remember, I think it was 5 for and 4 against.
Yes.
5 for cutting or 5 for keeping?
5 for keeping.
5 for keeping, 4 for cutting.
Yeah.
And I think that was cutting 7 and keeping 3. This agenda item, or the agenda item coming is I think keeping 5, cutting 4, and not filling 1.
5 for keeping, 4 for cutting, and it was for 7 and 3. The 7 was 7 we were going to hold on to, and 3.
No, they were going to hold on to 3, Dr. Chasson, and cut 6 and not fill 1. There is 1 vacant, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Gosh, this is when I would normally walk over and ask Ms. Blanco or somebody who voted for and who voted against the school safety officers. I tried to pull it up in our minutes, but our minutes don't seem to be updated right now.
Now, Dr. Chasson, this is going to be an actual agenda item
I'm just trying to gauge something ahead of time.
Okay.
Dr. Chasson, if you go back to the meeting where this happened and you go to that agenda item, the motion and the results of the vote are there for you to look at.
Yeah, for some reason mine is not like remotely, but y'all go ahead. Let me give it another try. I'll pull it up on the laptop.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments before we move on to item 2.3? All right. Mr. Guidry, if we could move to 2.3, General Fund Cost Centers, proposed budgets for the 1100 series. What we do here, board members, is if there's a question or comment concerning this cost center, we go into it. If not, we just keep on moving through them. Mr. Guidry?
Okay, so the only comment I'd want to make here is these particular schedules have not changed since the March 31st meeting. Any proposed changes that we've made since the March 31st meeting have been included in the administrative adjustments column. The reason for that is we wanted to make it very easy for the board and the public to see what line items we were proposing to change without having to go through the entire packet again. So from the 1100s to the 1500s, there have been no changes since the last meeting, but we can go through each one in the event that questions may have arisen since the last meeting, if you so choose.
Okay, fellow board members, we have 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, and 2.7 contain those series from 1100 to 1500. If there are any questions concerning any of these cost centers, now would be the time to ask Mr. Guidry. If not, we will continue and move on to 2.8.
May I ask a question about cost center 1309?
Yes, you may, sir.
Mr. Guidry, can you explain to me how the bus rental reimbursable and expense reimbursement line items function?
The bus rental reimbursables, and I'm flipping to that that particular cost center, is basically reimbursements from the schools for the most part for field trips. So any field trips that we pay to our bus drivers, we pay our bus drivers for, we in turn bill the schools for their respective field trips and record it in the reimbursable line item. Ms. Richard, would you like to add anything else to that? Am I missing any other types?
So can I clarify that you record, let's say a school rents a bus for $100, and so that comes in as $100 expense on that cost center, or that line item? Or does it come in as $100 credit?
We record the expense in one line item and the reimbursement as in the reimbursable line item. So they're recorded as separate line items.
And to be clear, the money actually comes from the school, not from the general fund, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any more questions on these 5 items? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on down to 2.8. Approval request for the school staffing portion of the proposed fiscal year 2021 general fund budget.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm going to make a motion
Do
first.
you want us to go ahead and make a motion before we speak? Go ahead, Ms. Morrison.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for item 2.8, approval of request for the school staffing portion of proposed fiscal year 2021 general fund budget. Can you hear me?
Yes, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Morrison, seconded by Mr. Centani. That motion will be that the board approves the school staffing portion of the proposed 2021 general fund budget and authorizes administration to move forward with the school-related staffing hiring process for the fiscal year of 2021 2021. Motion by Mrs. Centani. And, motion by Ms. Morrison, second by Mrs. Centani. We're going to go ahead and ask if there's any public comment. The number once again for the hotline is 337-521-7018. And we'll allow time for anyone to call in. We have no public comment. Do we have any board member comment before we go to the vote? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Not up there. Oh, you voted already?
Yes.
Hey, come up. Yeah. I was. Oh. Oh, you got too many things open. Shame. Maybe so.
Motion carries. 9 for, none against. Next item on the agenda will be finance. Proposed increase to fiscal year 2021 coaching stipend for coaches of extracurricular activities. I'll entertain a motion. Go ahead, sir.
I move.
Hang on, I can't see the recommended action. I move that the board include the proposed 2020-2021 general fund budget funding of $156,000 for an increase in the coaching stipend schedule for coaches of extracurricular activities as attached in the public contents section of this agenda item.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Dr. Aguilar, a second by Ms. Morrison. We'll go ahead and open the floor up for any public comment. The number is 337-521-7018. We'll give the allotted time for anyone to call in.
Yes, I wish to make a comment on the motion.
Okay, please
Please,
remember you have 3 minutes for comments only.
Okay. This is Julia Reed, President of the Lafayette Parish Association of Educators. I wish to put our support behind this motion, as we are in support of anything that recognizes the hard work of teachers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now reset the timer in case there are any other public comments. 521-7018. 521-7018. Public comment is now closed. Do we have any board member comment? Dr. Aguilar?
Heard at the last budget workshop. I did reach out to Mr. Nick Jeffers and Ms. Paget Guidry to take a look at the indexing and to make sure that it very closely aligned with the indexes proposed for the athletic coaches. And they worked to present to you today something they're comfortable with. And I urge your approval of this increase in stipends for these extracurricular activities performed by 100+ individuals in the district.
Thank you, Dr. Aguilar. Any other board member comments?
Mr.
Okay. Mr. Broussard. Mr. Broussard.
We can't hear Mr. Broussard.
Yeah, we're working on that. Did you press your unmute? Okay. No, sir. Did you press your unmute on the left? No, sir. If you don't mind, Mr. Broussard, will y'all correct that? Ms. LeBou, do you have a question?
Oh, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is for Mr. Guidry. Is he available to answer our question?
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Mr. Guidry, this proposed increase is not in the budget that you just brought forth. That was it?
That is correct. It's not currently included.
So in order for us to fund this, we would have to go in and find further cuts in other areas of the budget and or take this $156,000 from that 1.7 million we were going to put towards funding for the rebuild of Lafayette High and the other two schools, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay. You're
Thank
welcome.
you. While we wait for Mr. Broussard's microphone, do we have any other board member comment? Questions?
Yes.
Wait for Mr. Broussard.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
You can?
Yes,
As I was saying, this was brought back for a simple explanation as to how we got from 10% for one and 1.7. What did we start with? In my simple knowledge of math, it's a percentage of students, a percentage of hours, a percentage of the salary. I know we got 182 days of employment, but how did we choose that percentage to give them that amount of money? Is that a chart that say this elementary band teacher gets X amount of percentage of their salary to do this, or what number did we start with to arrive at a sum?
Mr. Broussard, these individuals are currently being paid.
Can't hear Dr. Aguilar.
Mr. Broussard, these positions are currently being paid a stipend for the work that's being performed. These percentages recommend a modest increase in those percentages. It's a percent of their base teacher salary that's provided. So in the case of band directors, the index would be 10.75%. For that group, it's an increase of about 2.55%. On average, it's 2% or less that we're asking for an increase in their stipends.
Mr. Broussard?
Yes, I'm getting the feedback when we talk, that's why I'm taking it off. I understand. I'm just trying to figure in my mind, is there a chart someplace that says assistant robotics coach get 4.5% to where a head cheerleader coach gets 5.75%? You know, that's
Yes, sir.
what I'm figuring out. Is there a chart someplace that says that?
Mr. Broussard, Mr. Jeffers and Mrs. Guidry, they worked on these recommended percentages. So what you're looking at is the chart that they're recommending for supplemental pay.
It's the chart that we're going to use to pay them.
Yes, sir.
We have any other board member comment? Ms. Morrison has a question.
We can't hear Miss Morrison.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, my question was, does it include non-LPSS staff? Since we do have coaches that work for us, but they're not really teachers, that's all they do. Does this include that as well? And like what percentage, or how did we will they be getting an increase, and how will their increase work?
Mr. Veed, did you hear Ms. Morrison's question?
Yes, ma'am. As of right now, I'm sorry.
Mr. Veed speaking, I can't hear him. We can't hear you, Caleb. Just a minute, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Veed,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
need you to speak louder.
Okay.
Mr. Veed, if you turn your I think you have an echo in the background. Maybe you have a second speaker on or something. Try that.
Okay. How's this?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question for me? Going through all that, I kind of lost it.
Yes, my question was, how do we determine the increase for non-LPSS employees that have coaching jobs with us, but they're not teachers? That's all they do for LPSS. How do you determine their increase in the stipend?
It's actually for anyone who was not an employee with us, who's not an actual employee with us. Previously, their stipend was determined it was something that was negotiated between the school and the person, and then the school would pay that person out of their school funds. Going forward, we're actually trying to look and make that more uniform. That way we have a set amount that a coach would get. We haven't finalized that. I know there was some talk with the attorneys a little while back about some things for that, but it's not quite final yet on what we're going to put together. But we are planning on having a schedule for any type of coach, whether it's an athletic coach or anyone else that would bowling, anything like that comes in that's not an employee, that we have a set amount that they get paid, rather than one school can pay this so they pay that, and another school can pay this so they pay that. We'll have a set amount.
So right now with this 156,000, it does not include these employees,
No.
or it does
No,
not?
This is only employees of the district.
Okay, all right, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Veed. Any other board member comment?
President,
Yes, Mr. Angel.
Mr. President, while I agree with the concept of the motion, I want to reinforce the fact that you have two of the oldest schools in our parish, Lafayette High and Karen Crow Heights Elementary, that we're trying to save money, small amounts of money every year so that we can replace them. And whereas I would agree with the concept, I would respectfully request that Dr. Aguilar look for other places where we can revise the budget and not take money. If we keep picking away at rebuilding our schools, we'll never get to the end. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other board member comment?
Mr. President, can I make one more comment?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. My understanding is that the budget balance, the budget that we previously viewed balanced, because we're assuming that we're going to cut 5 SSO positions. We don't cut those positions, which is our next vote. My understanding is the budget will again be out of balance, and we will have a deficit, or we'll be showing a negative number, and we'll be out of balance. We add this on top of that. Again, this will already put our budget out of balance as projected. We're also assuming we're going to cut 5 SSO positions in order to have that budget. So I just want everybody to keep that in mind moving forward, that we this is not money that's already funded in that balanced budget that we just reviewed.
Correct, Ms. LeBeau. Do we have any other board member comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Latchley.
Dr. Chasson?
The question would be for, I'm assuming, Dr. Aguilar, the question being, what are the proposed cuts that he's recommending for the 156,000? Or are you bouncing it back to staff to find the proposed cuts?
Dr. Aguilar?
Board members, this board directed staff at the last budget meeting to locate about $1.7 million worth of cuts. I don't remember anybody, aside from a couple of motions I had, that were intended to find money to dump into our new school building program. $156,000 is a very, very small portion of our $300+ million general fund budget. I would urge the superintendent to come back to the board indicating where the money would be found to balance this budget to provide these pay raises. And if she's not able to do that, I can make some recommendations as well.
Okay. Do I still have the floor, Mr. Latchley?
Yes, you do, Dr. Chasson.
Well, Dr. Aguilar, I didn't mean you to get chippy about it. That was the point of the question. The question was, do you have proposed cuts, or do you plan on bouncing it back? So the basic answer is you plan on bouncing it back. I'm quite all right with that. Let's see, $156,000. Well, seeing as that may be the case. I guess a second question is, and somebody's gonna have to tell me if this is germane to the topic, because this will help me going forward. Is it that the SSOs are the proposed cuts for the stipends, in someone's opinion, or is it that the SSOs are a proposed cut for a line item to rebuild the schools? Because that helps figure into this actual agenda item.
Dr. Chasson, I think from what Mr. Guidry was telling us earlier when we went through the budget, that was the 300 and something thousand was part of the 1.7, added up to the 1.7. So this 156 would be in addition to the 1.7. And if I'm mistaken on that, Mr. Guidry can please correct me.
That is correct.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so in addition, gotcha.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, it's not that I don't support the stipends for these extracurricular activities, but I'm always of the opinion that there are a lot more folks, such as our custodians and cafeteria workers, that are always on the short end of the stick when it comes to being the lowest paid tier of our employees. So I'm actually, well, I'm not okay with them both failing, but let me propose a substitute motion then. Let's see. Because I know inevitably for us to use $156,000, that no matter what you're using it for, we're gonna have to cut it from somewhere else. So before this passes, I would rather folks either vote for or vote down a pay increase for those lower paid employees. You know what? You guys can do it. Go ahead. I'm gonna hold off on that, and I'm gonna go ahead and let it go to a vote.
Okay. Are there any other board member comment? Questions? All right, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Did the board approve including the proposed?
Is it up? Oh, well. I do not see it. I don't know. This. Wait. Yeah, but I did. See, I'm right here, but it's not coming up. I don't know. Let me go back. Come on. Dr. Chasson is the last one. The vote fails. 2 yes, 7 no's. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which would be 2.10, fiscal year 2021 general fund budget, reduction of 5 school safety officer slots. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead, Ms. Mason.
All right. A motion that the board approves, including in the 2021 general fund budget, a reduction of 5 school safety officer slots.
We have a motion.
Mr. President.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Mason and a second by Mr. Angel. We will now open the floor for public comment. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that number is 337-521-7018. It's for public comment. We have no public comment at this time. Do we have any board member comment or questions?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Chasson, you have the floor.
Can someone quickly answer, is the 5 actually 4 and the vacant slot?
Yes, Dr. Shasta, that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. And this is to help the 1.7, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So who is there a suggested, if this fails, obviously then the 1.7 will still then be short, what is it, 330,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there proposed possible cuts, like a second line and a third line and a fourth line item that staff has looked at, or no? Not
No,
yet.
sir. We'll go back to the drawing board.
Okay.
Is that it, Dr. Chasson?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you have another comment, go on ahead.
Okay. 5 school safety officer slots. No, sir. I'm gonna reserve my comments.
Okay. Any other board member comment? As usual, I will vote in support of the school safety officers, but I'm asking, is there any other board member comment before we go to the vote? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. The motion carries 5-4, 4 against. Our next and final item.
I have a question, Mr. Latchley.
Yes, sir, Dr. Chasson.
Concerning that item, when does that go into effect?
I would have to ask staff. I would probably say for next fiscal year, July 1.
Yes, it'll be for the 2021 school year, July 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next item will not need action is 2.11, 2020-2021 proposed group insurance fund budget. Mr. Guidry, are there any comments on this?
I can't hear Billy.
Can't hear it.
Billy, I think you're muted. He's telling us that there is no change since the March 31st meeting on this item. Everything is still the same as was discussed.
May I make a comment, Mr. President?
You may.
This is a friendly reminder to our staff that let's not step into the same mess that we stepped into last year by delaying communication to our plan members that proposed changes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Centani.
Any other comments for this item? Anyone else have anything before I adjourn the meeting? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.